LA was such a dream of mine, and it's really pretty amazing that it came true. Right now I'm walking on the Venice Beach boardwalk, and it's kind of nostalgic being over here. A lot of really good memories here. I love it. It brings me back to the first time I ever came here and just felt like, wow, this is really California. This is really it. Hi creative crew, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking all things Los Angeles. I'm going to tell you why I left Los Angeles, do I regret it, and do I think it's a good place to live? Let's get into it. Living in LA was truly a dream of mine. I wanted to live there ever since I was a little girl. I was obsessed with all things California. It seemed like all of the really cool TV shows were based in California. It just looked like everyone was having such a glamorous, laid-back time. I pictured myself waking up in the morning, getting ready to go to the beach, everyone being attractive, everyone just being so cool. And also I wanted to know where'd all the hippies go. All the good things you could possibly imagine, that was going to be my life in California. I had visited when I was maybe 21 years old. It just felt like everything looked like it was out of a movie. Palm trees, this blue sky. And you know what? It wasn't even the best of weather when I went. I think it was maybe in the 60s. It was the winter time, so you know, it wasn't like the peak of late summer in California, but still it beat the freezing cold New York weather. I'm originally from the East Coast. I had been living in New York City, had lived there for a long 7 years. I moved in with my mom, saved up money so I could move to the West Coast. It seemed like everything had really just aligned at that time. I had a job lined up, had a place to live. I was crashing with a childhood friend for my first month. It was so much fun. I had a community. I had already plugged myself into a church in Los Angeles and was making a ton of friends. It was just one of the best years of my life. My hippie vibe, my wanting to go to the beach all the time, Malibu, Laguna. Now, I won't say that didn't come with its struggles. It definitely came with its struggles, but when I look back at my first year in California, I'm reminded mostly of the good times. So 2018, best year of my life in California. It's like I was wearing rose-colored glasses. It was just amazing. 2019 was fun as well. I was working a cool job, making really cool friends, just really enjoying my time. I will say things did become a bit more challenging. I had quit my original job and started a new job, but was also looking for a place to live. I think the realities of Los Angeles really started to set in just a little bit more. Mind you, I didn't have a car. I was living in Koreatown and I was taking Ubers everywhere, or my friends were giving me rides. I didn't have, you know, all this money to where I had my own car and I had my own apartment or anything like that. Eventually, I got my own studio apartment towards the end of 2019. Come 2020, things start to shift just a little bit. I was still living in my studio apartment, watching a lot of Johnny Depp movies, eating a lot of Trader Joe's, really just kind of embracing my inner homebody. A lot of things were shut down, and I'm not just talking about the stores were shut down and, you know, all of the music venues and the fun things. I mean, the beaches were shut down. It took LA a while to gain its momentum back. I had moved to Culver City, which I absolutely loved. I was going to the beach a lot more, and I'd finally gotten a car. So I was able to do more things independently, but the realities of living in LA were really starting to set in more and more. This was November 2022. I moved back to the East Coast, and my plan was to travel, go to Europe, see places that I hadn't been before. I was really interested in starting this YouTube channel. You know, I have done some traveling throughout my 20s, and one of my regrets is not documenting it to its fullest. So I wanted to share those moments, and I wanted to share the creativity in my life and how I love to embrace that in my life. So my plan was to go to Europe. Long story short, The weather in Europe was terrible. I ended up not going, but I did a little bit of traveling. Went to Miami, which I'd never been to before, so that was fun. I actually ended up moving back to Los Angeles in January of 2023. Now, when I came back to LA, this was probably the hardest time that I'd ever had. I didn't have an official place to live. I was house sitting for a friend for a while she was out of the country. I was bouncing around. I stayed in my friend's guest house for a little bit. Didn't necessarily turn out the way I wanted it to, but it really was kind of a wake-up call for me that I needed to leave Los Angeles, at least for the time being. And after 5 years of living in LA, I'm gonna give you the main reasons why I decided to leave Los Angeles. Cost of living. It is expensive to live in Los Angeles. Many of you can already gather this if you've looked at apartment listings online, if you've looked on Trulia or Zillow or apartments.com, you'll see the cost of living is extremely high. A lot of people in LA, they get roommates. That is how you afford to live in LA. You either get into a relationship and you split the rent, or you have 1, 2, 3 roommates. I pretty much always had 1 to 2 roommates, aside from the time where I lived in a studio apartment by myself. To live in a nice apartment for $1,000 to $1,600, sometimes more, and still have roommates, I've gotten to the place in my life where ultimately I want to have my own place. You know, like I don't want to share an apartment with roommates unless, you know, I'm traveling for a specific amount of time and I'm looking to meet new people. Great. Like, I'm all for coexisting, okay? But if I'm gonna pay a decent amount of money to live somewhere nice, personally, I want it to be my own space. For some of you, that may not be an issue. Maybe you love having a ton of roommates. If that's your thing, awesome. Move to LA. But I'm telling you now, the cost of living between getting your apartment plus the price of gas, at a certain point, you would go to certain gas stations and it would be $7 a gallon. That's just insane. And in Los Angeles, you pretty much have to drive everywhere. So just keep in mind, your rent, your gas, your car insurance will most likely be high. Groceries, all of those things are gonna cost you. And the taxes, these are things to take into account if you wanna live in Los Angeles. This is a big reason why I left. Weather. Maya, what do you mean weather? I mean, it's Southern California. It's supposed to be sunny every day. Weather's in the 70s every day. It's just so beautiful. You can go to the beach and you can lay out all the time. That is not true. If you've never been to Los Angeles or Southern California, maybe this is something that you need to know right now. The weather is not always beach weather. Actually, for the most part, it's not beach weather. Recently, there's been a ton of rain, cloudy skies. It's not going to be, you know, sunshine and rainbows all the time. It's just not. Honestly, the only time in my later years in California where I really felt like I could lay out on the beach was between maybe mid-July and October. So if you notice, summer comes a bit later in Los Angeles. It tends to really heat up in the August to October months. And that just felt off to me. I'm from the East Coast. When September comes around, I wanted to start getting, you know, just a little bit chillier. You know, I want to sense some kind of change of seasons. I wasn't really getting that in Los Angeles. You know, I would say most of the time, the weather averages the 60s, but if we're talking wintertime, it can be anywhere from mid 40s at night to 60s. And it'll stay that way for quite some time. The weather in Los Angeles is not always sunny beach weather. I'm gonna tell you that right now. And with that being said, the ocean in Los Angeles is freezing. I think I got lucky because the summer of 2018, the water was fairly warm. I was swimming in the ocean all the time, and I personally love to swim in the ocean. I love it. I love it. I love to swim in the ocean. I love to lay out on the beach. And over the last few years, getting into the ocean has just not been very appealing. I am going to give LA some credit because The beaches are absolutely stunning. One of my favorite places in the world is Malibu. I love Manhattan Beach, Laguna, Venice. Like, the beach culture in Los Angeles is amazing.
They're just not warm.
They're just not. And when they are warm, I'm telling you, like, that's the time to be there. And I'm not saying the beach always has to be warm, but if you're expecting to come to LA and spend a lot of time on the beach, that might not be realistic, because you also have to take into account that you are going to be fighting traffic. And that's going to bring me into my next point, traffic. Now, look, this irritates me sometimes more than others. Sometimes I'm willing to just stick it out in the traffic, especially since I knew the times where traffic was really going to pick up. I would just kind of avoid going out at those times, but for the majority of the day, you're going to run into traffic. And if you want to take a trip to, let's say, Malibu, and you live in Culver City like I did, on a weekend especially, there's a certain window of time where you'll want to go. During a weekday, it's just risky, because you're going to be fighting people who are coming to and from work. It can be a hassle just getting through that LA traffic. It is what it is, okay? Let's move on to the next point. Air quality. The air quality in Los Angeles is just bad. Let's just call a spade a spade. It's bad. There's a lot of smog, and some of you may not even really care or really notice. I'm from the East Coast, where there are a lot of trees and grass, and it's beautiful and the air is fresh. And I really did miss that quality when living in Los Angeles. The air just felt so thick. Around the time I left, right before I left, I went to Denver, Colorado. I just did a video on Denver, Colorado, where I give you a little art tour. If you want to check that out, you can click on this little box up here. I just loved the air quality in Denver. I felt like I could breathe again. And I realized, man, like, I miss this. I miss just breathing in healthy air. Is that too much to ask? To have some healthy air? Let me know if that's too much to ask in the comments. The next point of why I left Los Angeles is values. Now, I was plugged into a church community, so I was surrounded by people who have the same belief system as I do. And not just the same belief system, okay? Because having morals isn't necessarily about, going to church every Sunday. But I mean, being surrounded by people who want the same things out of life. And I specifically mean that when it comes to just overall community in Los Angeles and the dating culture. You'll find that in LA, the dating culture is very casual. And if you're looking for something a little more serious, hey, I'm not gonna say that you can't find it in LA, because I know people that have, and I'm never gonna discredit that. You can find the person that you're meant to be with anywhere on this planet. Is a bit more challenging to find someone in Los Angeles that's willing to move at a slower pace, that's willing to take things more seriously when it comes to a relationship. A lot of people prioritize their careers. A lot of people see the dating pool as, oh, I have a ton of options. Why would I just settle down for one person? It may not be the place for you if you are looking for people who are more serious minded when it comes to relationships. The last point I'm going to talk about, the homeless community. When I say this, I don't mean, oh, homeless, just disgusting. Oh, no, that's not what I mean. The way Los Angeles is portrayed, okay? So what you might see on TV is not the reality of Los Angeles. There are people in Los Angeles that are multimillionaires, billionaires. You will see beautiful homes, okay? You'll see a lot of beauty in LA, but you will also see a lot of poverty. Doesn't matter if you're in Beverly Hills, if you're in Santa Monica, or if you're in downtown LA, you're going to see poverty. I definitely noticed that from the time I came to LA to the time that I left. It was an increasing issue. I know Los Angeles has had this issue for a long time. If you are a person that has a heart, it is going to start weighing on you. The amount of homelessness you see, the amount of poverty you see, the amount of garbage and encampments and all of these things that you see when you're in Los Angeles, it is devastating. And it seems to be getting worse and worse. It's not the homeless that I'm blaming for this issue. The city is not doing enough to solve this issue. And I think we're realizing more and more that this country as a whole just has a lot of mental health problems. And a lot of people that are on these streets are people that have extreme mental health issues. And I would love to see California really take this more seriously, but it just doesn't seem it's taken seriously enough. It's something that really just started to discourage me after 5 years of living in LA. You know, when I first came, I had those rose-colored glasses, and I saw just all the good things. And of course, I saw some bad things, but the longer I lived in LA, the more I realized this city isn't really what people may think it is. You're going to see a lot of poverty. You're just, there's no avoiding it. I left LA because I wanted a different experience. I wasn't willing to put in the fight to live in LA anymore. I did it for 5 years, and it was just an experience I'll never forget. I can't say that I'll never live in Los Angeles again. I don't know what's gonna happen in the future. Despite all of Los Angeles's problems, I still really love it. I really do. I mean, it is a magical place and has a lot of positive things, but I just have to acknowledge that it is not necessarily what you see on television. I'm at a point in my life where I want to experience everything God has to offer me, that this life has to offer me. And I got to a point where I realized LA just was not the end of the road for me. Do I regret leaving? No. I don't regret leaving because I know that I can always come back. I can always go back to LA. I'll actually be going back in a few weeks. I'm always gonna have those strong friendships in Los Angeles that I really value. This is by no means a video that is to trash Los Angeles. These are just the reasons why I left. And if you're thinking about moving to LA, these are some things to consider. Now, if you've been to LA or you're thinking about moving to LA, please leave your thoughts in the comments. I wanna know why you wanna move to LA, and I wanna know what keeps you in LA. I wanna know your perspective on this. So please leave that down below in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao.